Oh, let me put this on too. All right. 1 second. All right, we can start. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Afro Expats. It's Friday morning. We're going to do our Let's Talk Business live. We would love to
what? I think the video started since we started the call or something. Sorry.
What happened?
On YouTube, I think it started way before already. We've been streaming for a while, I think.
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
20-second delay. Yeah, we're live.
Cool. Thank you.
No worries. Hi, welcome back, everyone. This is Michelle for Afro Expats. Today, I have the complete pleasure of having Anna Siller back on this channel to talk with you guys about everything that has to do with business, or we're going to do an overview, not everything, but she is very knowledgeable about starting a business in Mexico, also about the laws. She deals in a lot of things that have to do with real estate, relocation, questions people may have about leases and contracts and things like that we really need to know. So I'm really happy to have her here. If you guys have questions, please drop them in the comments box. She's going to put together, she put together a really cool presentation to kind of educate us on things we should know. So I want to introduce her. She's considered a translator at SillerTranslations.com. That's how you can reach her. And also relocation expert attorney. So this is the lady you need to be in touch with if you're moving to anything to do with Lake Chapala, especially. She can answer questions and things like that for you. Also, I wanted to say that this video right now that's live, it will be available for you guys on replay, and it's recorded, so you can watch it after the fact. It's live right now, but it will be available after the fact. So I'll let Anna take over and talk a little bit about what she's going to present to us today. And thank you so much again for being here. You're like one of my favorite guests. I love all of you guys, but I love Anna.
Thank you, Michelle, and congratulations on your channel and on your viewers. I have had a great response from your viewers since the last time that we got to have a video chat, and I'm really excited to be back with this presentation that I prepared for you upon request, tailored for her because she wanted to know what do we need. So I've been busy finding out a proper way to present the information to you guys today. So I hope that you take advantage of it.
Yes, thank you so much.
I'm gonna try to share a presentation with you guys kind of briefly. Let me know if I can see.
I can see it. Hold on a second. Let me do this. All right. Okay.
Now I can't expand it, but
you can't. You can.
Can you see it good? All right, we'll work with this. So today, obviously, we're going to talk about kind of the legal aspects of starting a business in Mexico, and basically what you would need to make it really kind of official. So to kind of start getting you guys familiarized with what distinctions we're going to be making today, we're going to be talking about the difference between having a business as a sole proprietor and actually making a company. Okay. So if you are from the US and you are familiar with businesses and companies in the US, it's going to be something very similar. A sole proprietor is one individual who owns a business directly under their name, and their business is an unincorporated business. So incorporation is going to be a really big word for us today. Incorporation means that you have gone through a legal process to form your corporate entity. Okay, so we have those two differences: the sole proprietor versus somebody who actually starts a company. Okay, so to incorporate a business, you need, in general terms, first of all, to have two or more partners. When you form a company, it's almost impossible to have only one person be owner of the entire company. There are some ways, and we are going to briefly explore that further on. But in general, the rule is that you need to have two or more partners. Can foreigners be partners? Yes, they can, but it cannot be exclusively a company made out of with foreigner partners. After you find your partner that you're going to have your company with, then you need to file a whole ton of paperwork before a notary. And that process is going to be so that the notary can do what we call protocolize, or basically just make a legal record that you have formed your company, and also send that information to the public registry in the government so that you can be registered legally as a company. And once you already are registered legally as a company, then you're going to be paying taxes as your company. You're going to be getting your permits. Like, for example, if you're going to open a hotel or a restaurant, a bar, a vacation rental, you will probably need municipal licenses. So you would obtain all of that paperwork under the name of your company. And also you would become the employer, and you would have the faculty to hire and fire your employees under the name of your company, and not you personally like you would as a sole proprietor. So like we mentioned, can foreigners own a business in Mexico? Yes, Mexico has foreign investment treaties that are designed to allow and protect foreign investment. Let's talk about what kind of foreigners. For example, if you're on a tourist visa, you can be a partner in a company. Remember that we're not talking about you coming by yourself and starting your own company. You have to partner with somebody to do it. All you would need is, of course, for your FMM visa to be current. You can't be on that expired tourist visa. You would need a current passport, and you would also need to provide all your identifying information, as well as your information for your address in your home country and all your tax information there. If you are a resident, for example, if you're a permanent resident, you don't have to do any additional things to start your business in the immigration aspect. But if you are a temporary resident, then you do need to go to the immigration office and apply for permission to have economic activities or revenue. Once you have your permit to have revenue, then you also need to go sign up with the tax authority, which in Mexico is called SAT. And you need to have your tax ID issued to it, which in Mexico is called an RFC. Once you have all that paperwork, then you can go ahead with the process at the notary. Something very important, and this applies to any type of visa that you may be under. All foreigners must always present birth certificates. If they are married, marriage certificates. For example, if you are going to decide that if you die, you want to leave your share of the company to your son, then you also need to bring your son's birth certificate. And basically any pertinent document, like if you became a naturalized citizen of another country, if you ever had a name change, you need to have your current legal documents. And also, if it applies, if you are in a country that issues apostilles, then you need to have that, or your documents certified. And you also need to have them translated by a legal translator like me. So if you are in a situation where you are needing legal translation of your legal documents, that's also a service that we offer here at Siller Translation. So you would think that that's common sense, but actually a lot of people have issues going forward with their paperwork, especially in notarial acts, because they don't have the paperwork that they are required. Once all of that happens, if a foreigner is going to be part of a company, then once that company is incorporated, you also need to notify the Secretary of Foreign Relations that a company has been formed and there are foreigners being part of the company. Very briefly, we're going to talk about the types of companies that we can make. So the most common one is the varial capital. You may see the name of a company and then it will say SADECV. So CV is varial capital. This is a very, in general terms, the difference is that the varial capital, it's easy to add partners and transfer the shares. But we also have limited liability companies, which are also very trendy and accessible right now. In a limited liability company, it's harder for somebody to become a partner. Everybody has to vote and agree. And they're just in general a more limited type of society. And we also have a new type of company called simplified shares that in very general terms is the one that would allow for one person to start a company with the idea that later on they will have more capital and be able to add more partners. And also because the simplified shares companies are meant to be more accessible and simplified, this particular company does not require the whole paperwork at the notario, but it also has a very limited cap as to how much revenue you can generate to have this type of company. So I would recommend that you go ahead and start with a variable capital or a limited liability company so that you don't have to later on switch and do the whole process anyways because you're generating a lot of income. Okay, so let's talk about what we do at the notary. At the notary, we generate documents that are called articles of incorporation. If you're a business person, you may also know this as a certificate of incorporation or a corporate charter. It's just basically a set of formal documents that we are sending to the government to say, hey, I want to legally make my company. One thing to keep in mind is that in Mexico, a notary public is a very specialized attorney that is appointed by the state governor. So there are a very limited amount of notary publics. And it's important that when you form your company, you have a lawyer who has a good relationship with the notary. You will need an attorney as well as the notary public to redact, to write out all of these documents for you and make sure that all the information is correct. Here is a brief list of some of the things that might be in this document, like for example, the names and nationality of the partners, what is going to be the company's name, what is the purpose, how much is the share capital, the capital stock, the nominal value and nature of the shares, the address, who's going to be in the General Assembly, when are we going to vote, what powers are we going to have, is there going to be a commissioner, a reserve fund, when can we dissolve the company, and so on and so forth. All that information is what is going to be in your articles of incorporation. Once you do all of that, you went to the notary, you did all your paperwork, you signed, you form your company, and the notary comes back and says to you, okay, here is your paperwork that says that you have this company now. So in Mexico, we call the entity a moral person. We would call a natural person or, a normal individual, a physical person, and then we would call it an entity, a legal entity, a moral person. So as a moral person, you can already enter into legal relationships under the name of the entity. Like, for example, you can enter into a rental agreement, or if somebody sues you, they are going to sue the entity, or like we mentioned before, the employment. You're going to be issued a tax ID that belongs only to the company, and anybody, if you have an administrator or whoever is in charge of your company, they can do all the tax stuff for you. You don't have to go in person because you have somebody managing your company. Something important here is that the tax year in Mexico begins in January, and there are some tax advantages for new companies. So in order to take advantage of those tax breaks when it comes to particularly the sales tax, it's better to start your company in January so you can take advantage of that term. But you can start your company at any point of the year. Just for tax purposes, it's better to do it at the beginning of the year. And also another benefit of actually having a corporate entity is that you protect your personal assets, because you're limiting your personal liability by separating your personal assets from the assets of the corporation. So if somebody sues you or you have an issue with eminent domain, for example, type of situation, then they wouldn't be seizing your assets, only what belongs to that entity, okay? Also, if somebody sues you or you need to do something in court, well, you can just have your legal representative, your lawyer, show up on your behalf. You don't need to actually be personally sued. And like we mentioned, well, all of the things that are very complicated about the labor laws in Mexico, which are quite extensive and also are constantly being reformed. So you are also, if an employee gets injured or you have any type of issue come up, then you have that buffer between you and whatever that situation is by having your entity be directly responsible for whatever. So in this whole thing, we've talked about pretty much like businesses, but actually this whole process also applies if you want to start a nonprofit. You would go through the same process. You would go to a notary, you would have your articles of incorporation, you would name a board, you would need to have a director, a secretary, a treasurer, and members, and assemblies, and so on and so forth. So the nonprofit entity actually works pretty much kind of the same way. and it is also a moral person, and you also have the capacity to enter into legal relationships. In order to have the capacity to give people tax deductible receipts, then you have to take some extra steps with the tax authority once you create your entity. And you can also, for example, in both cases of the corporate or the nonprofit entity, have your own bank account for your company, and you can give that card to your administrators and so on. And the processes wouldn't be personal. So that was in a nutshell. And if you have, specific questions, specific ideas about the businesses that you want to start, or if that was way too fast and you want to break it down chunk by chunk, then of course I'm always available for personalized consultations. And I'm also available right now to hear our live viewers on any question that they may have regarding what we just discussed.
Well, that was fantastic, Anna. I do have some questions, and I'm not sure if others, I just didn't want to interrupt you because you were on a roll, girl. Okay, so if you could explain a little bit more about like the notary. I know we spoke about this before, but I don't know that people realize that a notary maybe has a little bit more authority than an attorney, as opposed to how it works in the US. Normally, we just use a notary to just kind of verify pretty much that, I am who I am signing this paper, and then it's embossed. But here, it's almost the complete opposite.
Yes, the notary does give public faith of, okay, I verified that this person actually signed this document, and they may also take down like a sworn statement. But in Mexico, the notary also does a lot of this type of business where they register those public acts. For example, if you buy a house and you get your deed, all of that is going to be done at a notary's. And it's the notary's job to make sure that your deed, doesn't have any issues, that it doesn't belong to somebody else besides the person who's here to sell it. And once they transfer the deed to your name, it's the notary's job to send that to the public property registry. So the public registry of property. But so the notario has kind of that extra job and that extra responsibility to register some very important acts, because obviously he has a lot of power to modify a document and say, okay, no, this house belongs to this person, or, this other person signed this document. So they are highly regarded attorneys. They do have to study notarial law. You have to take a test, and there's a contest to the test, and you have to answer back, and it's a whole thing. So you do have to be an attorney. You have to specialize in notarial law. You have to be appointed by the governor, and you also have to take a very extensive test to be a notary. So, for example, in my town, there's only about 4 or 5 notaries.
Wow.
So like getting an appointment is pretty hard. It's very expensive, obviously, because it's a very limited service. And, we talked about how extensive, for example, the documents that you're going to need to form a company are. And the notary also has to verify everybody's identity, get those birth certificates and all that, and register all that information. So the notario, he or she is going to be generating quite a bit amount of very lengthy, wordy documents. And we may have discussed it a little bit last time you and I talked, but Mexico, we have civil law, and our law is very much written. Everything is paper. So, that's what you're going to have during this process as well. Tons and tons and tons of paperwork.
So another question about that, because I've heard that in some cases, because it's so extensive and because their authority is so much higher in regard to like an attorney, because, like I said, it's in the reverse in the US. They are also kind of almost co-responsible for something if the paperwork is not correct or accurate, right? It could come back to them. Okay, so in saying that, I've heard, for example, in buying real estate, that you should hire your own notary that has nothing to do with the person you're buying from, because sometimes they could be in each other's, pockets or whatever. right, interest in terms of, obtaining land. And I think this is really important for foreigners to understand, this part of the law, to make sure that there's less issues and problems like you run into often a lot of real estate challenges, correct?
Right. You definitely should, you don't necessarily need to hire another notario. Your attorney should be able to check on what the notario is doing and make sure that everything is correct. So it's usually, for example, in a real estate transaction, either the buyer or the seller will have the right to choose the notario. So it's not always you're going to be in the position to bring your own notario in, but a lot of people don't know that they should have an attorney checking on what the notario is doing. They think that because the notario has a legal responsibility, therefore he's not going to do anything wrong. But as we've discussed before, it's much harder to solve things after the fact. So it's true that the notario has a legal responsibility, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to have issues further on. So we shouldn't trust that just because it says in a code certain thing that's actually what's going to happen. So we want to always take a lot of preventative measures, even with a notario, as respected as they are. We do need to have somebody in the game for us. The notario is not going to be your attorney.
So how would you make those connections? Because, for example, let's say I were buying land because I'm interested in doing that. And I'll give two scenarios. But most likely if I go direct to the person who owns the land and I don't deal with a realtor, how do I handle something like that? As opposed to if I had a realtor who has someone already set up, how do you get and stay involved? Is it just, okay, I'm going to find the most reputable person because so-and-so gave me them as word of mouth? Or is there another step that we can take to ensure that this process or this transaction is okay?
No, we're going to need to rely on our networks to find out in our area who does what, and especially when it comes to specialization, remember that a law is very, very broad. And, be wary of people who do like everything at a time. You know what I mean? So if you are going to transact obviously you don't want to lose your money. And there's a lot of things that are sketchy, like could be sketchy about it in Mexico. Like, let's say, for example, as a foreigner, giving that 10% kind of down payment or whatever. Like, we don't know, we don't have any way to secure that money really. Like, nobody tells you, okay, here's some official document that says you gave me this money. Like, if that person wants to run off with their money, they could. So it is important to really have like a protective shield way before you even, start to work out the terms. And yes, you would find that support asking around, your networks. Does anybody know a lawyer? Does anybody know a real estate lawyer? And feel them out. We've talked a little bit about how to investigate, like whether or not somebody is really a lawyer, stuff like that. So we don't have a great resource, like say online, maybe, for example, like a bar association, which is pretty common in the US. We don't have those types of associations. We have colleges, but it doesn't really guarantee anything. So yes, you're going to need to trust, reach out to the people that you trust to get those recommendations.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. I do have some more questions. Just wanted to acknowledge that.
Sure.
A couple people said hello. JY Hardy. Hi. Jason B. Hi. And the Yarbros, they made a comment. They said that what we were talking about was a great point. Thank you guys for joining us. So my other question is about having a nonprofit. I know that there are several nonprofits that operate in San Miguel, and they originated out of the US. Do you know how that works in terms of being able to function here? Is it the same as just getting a permit of some sort that says they're allowed to have a business, even if they originated in the US? Or do they have to formally establish kind of a whole I guess it's called a 501c nonprofit, or
Mhm.
501c3 or something like this in the US.
Well, remember that, for example, the purpose of the entity as a nonprofit would be the deduction of the taxes. So
Okay.
if you are going to be having people from the US donate money to some cause in Mexico, but you need to issue a tax deductible receipt to those people in the US, then you need your entity to do that in the US. And if you're going to have Mexican people or Mexican taxpayers give you money and say, I'm going to need a taxable deductible receipt for that, then you're not going to be able to issue that receipt unless you sign up, you get your tax ID, and you get permission to issue those tax-free receipts all in Mexico.
Okay.
So those charities are probably, if they are expat focused, they are probably generating most of their revenue from donations from the US.
Right. And yeah, outside of Mexico.
Mhm.
Okay. I was asking because my neighbor, she's heavily involved in Feed the Hungry, which has been around for a long time. And I know that they do different events and, benefits to raise money. But I
If
was,
they are like an established large scale, like they probably already registered as what we call an AC here.
okay. Okay. I just wondered how that worked. And
Which AC
then
means, AC
that's
means civil association.
Civil Association.
Mhm.
Okay. So my other question too, which I found interesting when your presentation was, is that I can actually um, be in a business with someone in Mexico on a tourist visa.
Can you repeat that, Michelle? I was reading the questions in the chat.
That's okay. Let's see. I'll read it too. My question, I'll read that one in a second. Um, my question is in your presentation, you made a comment or you were talking about the fact that I could be in a business, and I say I because I am more than a tourist, but on a tourist visa, I could actually be a partner in a business in Mexico as long as the other person is Mexican. Is that correct?
I'm not a foreigner, yes.
Okay.
So when we were kind of going through that, it may have seemed like, well, why does a tourist only need their FMM form? But if you're a resident, then you need to bring your RFC, you need to go to SAT and, file for them to issue you that RFC that allows you to have generate revenue. And you have to go to immigration if you're temporary as well. But the whole, everything that we're talking about here boils down to the taxes, okay? Obviously, if you're a tourist, you're not going to have a registration with the Mexican tax authority. Because in order to do that, you need a CURP, and in order to have a CURP, which is like our version sort of a social security number, then you're not going to be able to declare taxes and all of the things that you need to do with the tax authority. But if you are on a resident visa, whether it be permanent or temporary, then you already have your social security number. It's actually called the unique population registry code. You already have your tax ID, and you are already paying taxes and letting the tax authority know I'm having this income here. So you can do it as a tourist. At the end of the day, you are going to end up paying taxes because you're going to be part of a company that is going to have its own tax ID. So don't get, the idea, some people, oh, that's not fair. You can just be a tourist and go make money. No, that tourist is going to be a partner company that's going to generate taxes as well.
Okay. Is that even recommended though? Just, because I think there are a lot of folks who want to come and do something, right? And if it's a business where there's a place where you're renting and you're putting equipment into it, chances are that they may be teaming up with someone locally, depending on what the business is. I've heard more, because obviously we like to talk about horror stories as opposed to success. I've heard of people doing things like this and then sort of losing their shirt or pants because they were not Mexican and maybe they didn't have as many rights. I mean, is there any kind of way to ensure more of a success if you're just a tourist or even a temporary resident?
Well, let's put it this way. If you are generating income in Mexico, you need to pay taxes. Okay.
So it's more that.
So if I have a rental home, I'm renting out my house, I'm generating income, I need to pay taxes on that.
Okay.
I don't need to form a company to do that. There's a way to do that as an individual. It's called as a landlord. I would pay taxes on my rentals. Okay. Obviously, if, something happened to a tenant or whatever, then again, I'm personally liable because I am that person acting as the landlord. If I have a company, then we have all those buffers like we've discussed before. So that whether or not you are keeping up to date with your fiscal responsibilities is independent of whether you are doing things directly as yourself or as a corporation. Okay. You still need to pay taxes even if you are not incorporated. If you are generating revenue in Mexico and as if you are, for example, having some kind of relationship with your suppliers or employees, stuff like that, then you're making contracts, you're exchanging money, then you should already have a legal registration and you should be documenting all your income with the tax authority. Much like what I mentioned with the labor law, the tax law is also constantly changing and evolving. There's a lot of changes coming next year that is going to affect entrepreneurs. So you also want to have, in addition to a good relationship with your lawyer, a good relationship with an accountant that is up to date and they are informed on the reforms to the law, what bracket or regimen would be most convenient for you for the activities that you do, where can I have more deductions and pay less taxes. So all of that is going to be depending on specifically the business that you're going to do. And of course, we're always going to have the attitude, because there is so much informal employment, which we would call all that employment that doesn't declare taxes. We have so much informal employment in Mexico that it may almost seem silly to have this whole conversation. But the truth of the matter is that if the tax authority, like if, for example, you're a resident, you have a bank account and you're actually moving money through that account, any account that is registered with a banking institution, the tax authority can say, hey, wait a minute, where is this money coming from? And we've heard about it only is up to a certain amount, which is not even a great amount, like $500 transfers are already subject to revision. But the truth is that the tax authority has the authority to pretty much audit you at any point. And if they say you have been generating income and you haven't been paying taxes, regardless of whether it was in cash, a lot of people think I only have to declare things that are coming in electronically. No, you're actually supposed to declare all the cash that you're moving as well. And so it is going to be kind of for those people that want to take the extra step and they want to do things right and they don't want to run into problems along the way. But you are going to have a lot of people say, no, that's too hard. I'm not going to do all that. I'll wait until I have a problem to deal with it, But I'm here for the people that want to be good little angels.
A good citizen.
Yes.
All right. Well, there's another question too, actually. The Yarbros wanted to know, and thanks for joining us again. What legal consequences, if any, are there if it is an unregistered business with Mexico, which is sort of what you just touched on?
It depends on the type of business. Like, for example, if we're talking about a daycare, then that's very serious because a daycare needs to be registered and they need to have permits and, all types of protocols and lines. So, if we're talking about an unregistered taco stand, then that's not really going to be a good deal. Even though you should also know that actually the Mexican government does do some periodical efforts to regularize those people where they'll make it much more accessible for street vendors to register with the tax authority and get their stuff in line. But if, like I said, if you get audited, then you're going to deal with that audit, and whatever happens, happens, you know.
Okay,
But
well, I missed a part of that. It said at the beginning, if they're online consulting with US clients, I don't think that's an issue, but you can elaborate. I think that what I've understood is as long as you're not getting paid here in pesos, you know, then you're pretty much making and earning money in the US, then you're responsible for whatever your responsibilities are in the US. It doesn't affect.
But actually,
but you can elaborate.
You don't have to pay taxes twice, that's for sure. So if you are managing your banking and declaring, you know, as a sole proprietor, or you have an LLC or whatnot in the US, that's your stuff over there. So you don't need to pay that, but you should know that you need to consult with your US accountant as well as your Mexican accountant. Even if you're not going to pay taxes on that money, what do I need to declare? Okay, because I may need to, let's say if you do have a business in Mexico and you do have a tax ID that you have a lot of activity under because you have income, you're paying people, blah, 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 and you are a foreigner, and you also have economic activity in the US, you need to check whether or not you need to inform the Mexican tax authority, hey, I'm also generating this much money and paying this much money in the US. Or if you need to inform the US, hey, you actually do, there's a form to do it and everything, need to inform the US, hey, I'm generating revenue in Mexico and paying taxes on that as well.
Okay. Okay, there's another
to give
question.
That notice.
Right. There's another question from Jason. He said, what's the tax rate for foreign businesses? Do you know?
Well, the tax rate, it depends, because the tax rate is going to be different whether you're like a sole proprietor or you have a company. Okay. And then the tax rate for a company is going to be calculated based on what the revenue last year was. So basically it gets multiplied by that amount. That's why the first year you have that tax break, because it gets multiplied by 0 because you didn't have any income last year. So you don't have to pay that tax. Everything depending on what kind of company, what you're going to do. But in general terms, for a new company, you basically pay 0 the first year. And after that, then you pay in proportion to how much earnings you had last year.
Okay. I also wanted to put this out there because I think that this topic or area would probably initially affect a lot of us, meaning if you buy property and or you're renting property to whomever, that you also need to have a permit to do that and pay on that. And I don't know if you know the details of it, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there because I think that, for example, you know, that's one of my long-term goals is to have something and be able to rent it out with time. And I know that some people may even do that, say they're here for 6 months, or even if they're like subletting or subleasing or anything like that, that's also subject to you paying for either a permit of some sort or taxes, just like you would in the US, because I know that those laws changed through Airbnb quite a few years ago.
Yeah, you definitely need to pay taxes on rental income. And you don't necessarily need a permit, for example, for like an Airbnb. You do need a permit, for example, for a hotel. But that kind of vacation rental, there's also a lot of fluctuation going on in terms of that. Like, for example, one of the most important changes that happened recently was that Airbnb was just basically retaining a really large percentage in order to cover those taxes, unless you told Airbnb, no, I already had an accountant do my taxes, and I'm only due to pay this amount. You don't have to retain this other larger amount. Then they would actually, you know, give you back your money as long as you proved you were taking care of paying your taxes. Okay, which is something that they didn't used to do. So if you are doing Airbnb, you should really be doing a very specific accounting for Airbnbs. And I actually work with a person that specializes just in Airbnb taxes. So you need to check on that, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of money retained. And it doesn't also mean that necessarily because you had that money retained that you already met your obligations. You still like you are responsible for declaring. Like in Mexico, we need to declare monthly. So depending on the, the bracket that you're under, but in general, most brackets have to declare every month how much money I had in, how much I paid in taxes, how much of it was cash, what was the name of all the people that I transacted with, and what are their tax IDs. And you have to make that report. Or later on, for example, if I wanted to come into another business or even have a job, they may say, okay, I need to have your certificate that you are okay with the tax authority. And if you have issues, then you may not be issued that's called an opinion, the opinion by the tax authority. And they may say you may be denied opportunities to do a lot of things if you're not in good standing with the tax authority.
Okay. So a question a little bit more on that is this affects someone even if they are being paid in the US because the property is here in Mexico, correct? Like, for example, a lot of Airbnb owners, for example, if I had, I have an Airbnb account. So let's say I rented to someone that's coming from the US, they paid me, it went to my US bank account, but my property is here. It's the same exact thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. And if you don't do it, then like I said, Airbnb will make that retention for you. Okay. In terms of properties in Mexico, I don't know what is going on in other countries, but yes, you always have to think in terms of the jurisdiction. If the act happened in that place, then that law is what is going to prevail most of the time. So yes, like for example, in the cases that we've talked a little bit about what your ideas are and what you want to do, at the end of the day, if the people are going to carry out activities in Mexico and you are going to need to pay somebody in Mexico for those activities, then in my opinion, you should have an entity and you should be reporting taxes and every activity that you're doing, because you are entering into business and capital relationships with people.
Okay. And then I wanted to, I know, here we go.
And also to, like what I told you in the beginning, yes, we're out of time.
No, we're okay. Go ahead.
The liability buffer, you know what I mean? Like what if something happened to those people that paid me in dollars, but went to enjoy my services or my home in Mexico, and they were injured or they were, affected in some way, and they think that I'm liable for that. Then they're going to sue me, whether I'm in Mexico or the US, they can sue me, So whenever you have that other entity, then you can go on about your life and you have this pretty much like other person in Mexico representing, your interests and be able to transact on your behalf.
Okay. Now that's so much information and so much to know. I have like a gazillion questions as always for you because you always have so much to share. But one more, another quick question I had was about having like a permit. If you have a permanente, does it kind of work a little differently for you in terms of having a business? Is it easier or is it pretty much the same things? So I know that a tourist thing works with another person that's local to Mexico, a Mexican citizen. If you're a temporary resident or a permanent resident, do you need to also team up with someone that's Mexican?
Yes. All foreigners, the company can allow for foreign members, but it cannot be made exclusively of foreign people.
Interesting. Okay.
And that would be regardless of whether they were tourists or permanente or temporal.
Okay, so as a foreigner, if I am only a temp or a permanente, I cannot own a business by myself without having a Mexican partner of some sort.
Yes, well, you can't own a business by yourself, period.
Okay.
But like two foreigners couldn't open a business.
Okay.
Like they need to have like some Mexican partners, but you would always need to double check, like I said, there are a lot of international treaties and there are a lot of ways that it can be applicable that, you know, you can skirt around, or you can do this, that, or the other, depending on what you do with your work, with your attorney, with your notary, the purpose of your business.
Okay. No, it's good to know. I mean, I think we need to understand like how intricate things are, because that feels really intricate to me. And I also, you know, want people that want, because I'm speaking to a lot of folks that are starting things and doing things. I'm not really digging in to ask, well, how did you do that? You know, because I'm curious and I'm learning as I go as well. But I also want to make sure that people are knowledgeable and feel like they're entering into things, and you know, it's going to be sustainable.
Yeah, you always want to check. Like we're talking about a very wide range of possibilities from, for example, like I'm anticipating right now that a lot of people will hear like, okay, foreigners can't have a business by themselves in Mexico and go with that. But we're talking about, yes, a foreigner can be a sole proprietor. You know, they can offer professional services, have rentals, and do all of these things. You can do that. What we talked about today is the things that you need to form a company. And I think it's just want to make sure that we're kind of making that distinction.
Right, right. And also, I think this, so people also understand, this is an overview, right? This is not the final law. This is not the black and white. There are a lot of other parts and pieces to this conversation, and people need to understand that they would reach out to someone like yourself or someone locally to wherever they are to really get details for whatever it is they want to do. We're just trying to give you the overview, but additionally, we also want you to try to do your best to do it the right way, you know, so that in the end, if you do start generating income, hopefully a lot of income, that you will have success with that, because we all know that sometimes people will report you for things if they see that you're making money just because. And I've had foreigners and locals tell me this. I've had foreigners and Mexicans tell me this specifically. You know, there's a lady that I know, she has a hotel, and she's like, you want to make sure you do it the right way, because people will get probably a little bit jealous of you if they see you're making a lot of money, and they'll, you know, put you out there. And this is anyone. So you just want to protect yourself.
I just saw in the chat like an interesting comment. I see a lot of American businesses like Walmart, Costco, Starbucks, Burger King, Office Depot. So all of those American businesses actually do come to Mexico and form Mexican companies. So they might not be called Burger King. They may be called like Food Operator of the West, you know, Capital Society. So remember that the name that you form for your company doesn't necessarily have to be the same as the commercial name. Even Coca-Cola, the company is not called Coca-Cola, it's called Bottling Company of Mexico, Capital Society. So even if the product, and if you see American companies, it doesn't mean that I come as an American company and I transact as an American company. No, I come, I form a Mexican company, and I do all my Mexican things through my Mexican company and whatever else I need to do with my headquarters elsewhere.
It's like a DBA, you know, in the US, a DBA, doing business as. In the US, I had a company that I formulated. I had a tax ID, and I had one tax ID, but with that, I was able to create other entities that were spin-off, but I used the same tax ID, because when I started, this is what I was. But later on, I decided, okay, I want to do something else. And all I had to do was file like a $50 doing business as, but this is still my same tax ID. No, so sort of the same concept. And yes, so that answered that.
Yeah. And there's always that as well. You can always like change from one type of regimen to another. You know, if you are making more money, less money, if deductions, whatever you have, you can make all those changes through your tax ID as well.
Okay. And you may or may not know the answer to this question, because I've had conversations with Patricia in the past, and she was kind of talking about or speaking to the fact that if you set your business up a certain way, maybe in Mexico, that you're not going to be liable, and I don't know how it's all done, and you may not know the answer, but I'm just bringing it up. You may not be liable for up to 90,000 US dollars in taxes on both sides. So I think it's something to do with just what you're claiming, and it could be what you're claiming in the US, because I know that you can do that, and also maybe the same in Mexico. And I know you're not a necessarily accountant, but
no, and I actually took like a course yesterday about the new tax laws and stuff. And there are so many different like ways that you can, register like yourself as if you're professional services. And yes, there is this new like simplified bracket that is like, okay, you don't have to declare, but you're not going to be able to have the deductions. So yeah, I mean, it would be very hard to find out like what she was talking about. And also we're awaiting whether or not all of that is going to be reformed next year. So this may not even be valid information 2 or 3 months from now. So yeah, I mean, I would say definitely any type of question like that specifically to your business, especially what's more convenient for you, can vary even person to person if they are in the same profession. So you definitely want to have an accountant that's like really knowledgeable and really up to date on what's going on.
So I think the key is to have a very good accountant to do your taxes, make sure you're on the up and up. And also if you plan on investing money to buy a piece of land, property, build or whatever, because the same person had Java Jazz. I like that name. What about starting a restaurant? I know that can be intricate, and I'm going to let you answer that, and then we'll segue out. But my understanding is obviously if you do it out of your home, which is legal, more legal in Mexico than it is in the US, that it seems less of a burden than actually open a physical location.
If you have the choice to do it formally or informally. So let's talk about how to do it formally. In a restaurant, you would need to pay a rent, you would need to have a health permit, you would need to have a municipal license, you would need to hire people and make sure that these are all requirements by law. Make sure that those people have the government health insurance as well as paying taxes for those people. So all of those requirements by law would already tell you that even to have a restaurant, you should actually form an entity and transact for all of those things under the name of your entity. Of course, you're going to have a lot of people that don't do that, but you should pay taxes, you should pay rentals, you should be employing people with the correct benefits and by law.
Okay. And if you do it out of your home, you just focus on paying taxes or wing it? Not that I want you to give me bad advice. I'm just trying to.
I mean, if you do it out of your home, you're liable, of course, to getting shutting down by some sanitary health authority. You're, of course, liable for anybody that worked for you to sue you, because even if you never signed a contract or anything, technically the law says if they showed up with a schedule several times a week, that's your employee. So if that employee, for example, becomes injured on the job, even on their way to their job or on the way home, you would be liable as the employer, even if you never had anything signed. So of course you are setting yourself up to a lot of, things happening, especially if you're a foreigner. I think, being a foreigner is a little bit more complicated because maybe Mexican people would be like, well, sue me, or I'll find me or whatever. But, as a foreigner, you're registered with immigration. You're required to notify immigration of all your current addresses, and you should be easily locatable. And also your visas can always be revoked. So
yeah, that wouldn't be good. So
trust me, not paying taxes is a very good reason for the Mexican government to revoke your visa.
Oh, absolutely. And in all honesty, it really is not a lot. So it's kind of worth paying. I mean, it's not a lot in terms of maybe a smaller business. I know that you and I spoke about this in our last conversation, where yes, when you do start making more money, you're paying more, and some people are, kind of bitter about this, but it's
Yeah.
it's a necessary thing.
And
So
it's all about being savvy, obviously, as
true.
like, for example, what I am right now, a professional services, I can deduct my rent, I can deduct, tuitions, gasoline, all of that. I just need to have a really good communication with my accountant. So he's registering those deductions for me and letting me know what is the correct way to process them and what does my receipt need to say and all that stuff. I can also deduct expenses that I have abroad as well. Like if I take a course in the US, I can deduct that because it's coming to benefit directly the business that I do. So you
Okay.
can't deduct everything, but you can deduct the things
A
that are
lot.
expenses of your business.
Okay. Well, I thank you for all your knowledge
Of
and that
course, Michelle.
presentation. We're definitely going to save this. Please tell everyone how they can be in touch with
Mhm.
Anna. She provides so much information, and it's worth hiring her if you are having any questions about setting up a business or having things translated, because that's really important. We talked about that before, making sure you understand the documents that you're signing. If you're not speaking fluent, clear Spanish, ignorance of the law is not an excuse, and we've heard that a million times. Just, use her services in terms of contracts. You can explain a little bit more what you offer, and then also your relocation. We spoke about that. Your
Yeah.
relocation things to Lake Chapala. And oh, by the way, she's in Lake Chapala. I know we said that at the beginning, but you didn't mention that.
Yeah. Well, my main expertise is being a certified court translator and interpreter. So, like, especially if you're needing your legal documents translated, like birth certificates, death certificates, wills, deeds, paperwork necessary for immigration, like bank account statements, so on. I offer all of those services, medical translation as well, if you're needing to translate medical reports or, tests that you had done. And I am, right now, I do not litigate yet, but I do offer all kinds of legal consultant services. So if you want to schedule like a one-on-one, I'm more than willing to hear out your situation and advise you as to what are the next steps to take. Also, if you're not in a legal problem or trying to start a business, but you're just wanting to relocate, I can consult with you as well to give you a better idea what to expect, what to prepare for, and also offer services as a rental concierge here in Lake Chapala to actually help you find a house while you're still over there, send you reviews on the house. Once you decide on a house, review your contract. Today I'm meeting Pamela, who hired me after our last video, and she's culminating her journey that we've had together. Today, she's gonna arrive to a fully furnished apartment with all the services turned on. I've even made sure there's water and like anything that she may need.
That's awesome.
And
so you're like
so
really
it's like
hands-on.
turnkey. And I handled all the business, for them. That was one of my clients, but I've been pretty busy this season because we are in the high season now from pretty much September to March. Everybody who's going to escape winter up north is coming now. So
Yes.
my girl Pamela, I'm thinking about her right now because she's on her way. But that's what I do. I just try to make people feel like, okay, they're not going to be alone. They're not going to be lost. Everything is going to be ready. Somebody's, that they can call and start getting those relationships going, start getting a driver, start knowing where to get money, where can I shop. I've had some other clients also from your video last time that had, only ate a certain type of style of food. And so like our challenge has been, finding that food in where they moved. So that I can pretty much assist you like in all of the aspects of your relocation.
That's awesome. I absolutely love that. Even Rakia last week, she offers a similar service down in Orizaba, Veracruz. Yeah. And I think that that's amazing because as we know, I think the largest group of ethnic women, ethnic people coming to Mexico are Black women. And yeah, you want to have like that comfort where you can have that soft landing and someone's there to kind of help you. So I think that you're
Yeah.
offering a great service to whomever your clients are to kind of hold their hand through the process. I'm probably one step back from that, and that's most like the online. And obviously when they get here, I'm like, reach out to me and things like that. But I'm noticing that there are a lot
Yeah.
of women coming and they have a little anxiety, and I totally understand that, especially if you're on your own and you need to make that connection to someone. So I think that's fabulous. I think what you're doing is fabulous. Yeah.
And
And
once that you're here, we also do driver's licenses and visas and all, anything else.
okay, the whole works. I
Yeah.
need to move to Lake Chapala.
I know. I want our kids that are like twin flames to fall in love with each
Yes.
other already.
You need to
Yeah.
come and visit me, and I need to go over there because I just see all the photos. And I don't know if I
Yeah.
told you this, but it was one of my places that I considered, on my
Yes.
list of places to move to. But at the time, I just couldn't find much about families. I
Yeah.
couldn't find a lot of like families that were
It's
moving there.
definitely a more emergent thing,
Yeah.
but it's there. Yeah, for sure. And
Okay.
there are
Yeah.
some Facebook groups you guys can look up.
Okay.
Kids in Lake Chapala, families in Lake
I'm
Chapala.
going to
Yeah.
actually make a note of that because, I have people who ask about Lake
Mhm.
Chapala or Ajijic. How far is Ajijic from you? Just
It's like a 20-minute drive
okay.
between all
So
the
it's
towns like Ajijic,
that time.
Chapala, San
Okay.
Juan, Cosala. So
Okay.
it's all like one little town.
Yeah.
But it is a good life, for kids developing outside in nature and all that stuff.
Mhm.
I love it.
That's perfect.
Mhm.
And Doug Franklin, yes, the Yarbros are here. Yes.
Thank you so much to everybody who joined
Yes.
us. We really
Thank you,
appreciate your time,
everyone.
your
Absolutely.
interaction.
Absolutely. We appreciate that. And everyone that tuned in, please be sure to find Anna online at sillertranslations.com if you have more questions or you want to reach out to her. And you can also find me at afroexpats.com. I also offer consultations, mostly focusing on this area, San Miguel de Allende, and just an overview. I think we both offer the overview consultation about how to get to Mexico. I actually had someone in India write me and say, hey, I want to move to Mexico. Can you help me?
Fun.
I don't know what the laws are for someone,
Yeah.
but hey, like reach out. So you never know who's online watching. We're here to continue inspiring, and that is the purpose of my channel. I'm so excited that so many people are joining and they're finding this content very useful. So I thank everyone for tuning in every week and supporting us and supporting my guests who are really taking their time to talk to me and share knowledge and drop gems. So I really am grateful to all of you. And if you haven't subscribed, please make sure you subscribe, share, and like all of my videos. This is going to be available on replay. I'll try to post it all around on my platforms so that people can access it. And if you guys have any questions or need help with anything pertaining to Anna, please reach out to her. And thank you again.
Sillertranslations.com.
That's right, sillertranslations.com. You got it.
Thank
All right.
you.
Have a good Friday, everyone. Great weekend. Stay safe.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Bye.